Hi everyone, welcome to our session. I'm here with Alexey Bukhteyev. Alex and I want to share our research about small Italian company that has been active for more than 5 years, providing services to attackers and helping them penetrate computer security using sophisticated tactics for evasions. 3 months ago, we revealed CloudEye's operations. The CloudEye exposure led to the CloudEye service suspension and flattening of the attack curve. My name is Arie Olshtein. I done this research with Alexey. As you can see, we are both working at Checkpoint, but we do not work on the same team. I'm sitting in Tel Aviv, while Alexey is in Minsk. One thing we have in common is that we are both malware hunters. On a daily basis, I monitor thousands of suspicious files. Most of my time you can find me playing inside of a sandbox looking at suspicious campaign and unique malwares. I also write protections, YAR rules and behavior signature to detect new threats. Alex, on the other hand, is a malware reverse engineer and explore much more in depth. Alex?
Thanks, Arie. Hello, everybody. My name is Alexey Bukhteyev. And as Arie said, I am a reverse engineer at Checkpoint. I research insides of malware with help of disassemblers, debuggers, and other tools. I also work on macOS simulation and develop own tools for malware research automation. Arie?
Thank you, Alex. Today we want to present our success story. How in the last 3 months we took down the top malicious dropper of the year. You know, we really enjoy detecting evasive malware, but here it felt extremely awesome. We uncovered the identity behind what was known as GuLoader, which led to takedown. CloudEye's exposure has resonated in the press. As a result, only 2 days after our publication, CloudEye announced on their website the suspension of their service. Only 3 days after our publication, our telemetry showed a dramatic decrease in appearance of new GuLoader CloudEye attacks. We can say that CloudEye made a fortune by selling their product to malicious actors. If we do the math, a CloudEye plan that charges a minimum rate of $100 per month multiplied by 5,000 customers lead us to estimate that they made at least $500,000. But some monthly plan can cost up to $750 per month, and some customers most likely use the service for multiple months. Therefore, CloudEye's earnings were likely much higher. We present the full proof of the direct connection between the GuLoader malware and the CloudEye protector, a product sold and distributed by Italian entrepreneurs. GuLoader is a dropper that download and decrypt malicious payloads such as Agent Tesla, Formbook, Remcos, Nanocore, Lokibot, Azure, and many more. Even before our exposure, the research community spoke all the time about GuLoader. Alex also published a blog called Threat Actor Migrating to the Cloud. GuLoader was everywhere. Here is a heat map of GuLoader in April-May, and as you can see, it took part in attack all over the world. Our telemetry showed us a huge number of attacks on a daily basis, more than 100 attacks per day. If you look closely at the graph, you can see a decrease in attack on the weekend. Of course, even attackers need to rest on the weekend and holidays. We saw GuLoader convey different malware payload by different actors. We saw samples of more than 20 malware families delivered by GuLoader, mostly info stealers and remote administration tools. GuLoader abused some compromised websites, but primarily used legitimate cloud storage services. For example, 72% of GuLoader samples downloaded the encrypted malicious payload from Google Drive, and 6% download them from OneDrive. Okay, to explain how GuLoader works, we first need to explain what a packer is and why attackers use it. Currently, most antiviruses can detect malicious content only by static scanning. The attackers are looking for a way to bypass the antivirus product, so they are searching for packers. also known as a crypter in hacking forums. In a classic packer, the service takes the payload, encrypts it, and saves it inside of another executable. The packer is designed to unpack the payload and run the payload only when the file is in the target memory. Therefore, when antivirus scans the file, it can see the actual malicious payload by static scanning. And in the case of GuLoader, the victims always receive a small file, usually no more than 100 kilobytes. It doesn't matter what was the size of the original executable file. The original file is encrypted and stored in cloud services such as Google Drive. This is very useful for malware actors because when malware researchers try to analyze a GuLoader sample, they don't see the payload, just a small downloader and nothing more. Alex, can you explain the inside structure of GuLoader?
Thanks, Arie. Yes. Let's look deeper into GuLoader sample. It is built with Visual Basic 6 compiler and consists of two parts. One of them is a small decryptor but heavily obfuscated and hidden among useless instructions and a lot of conditional jumps. The second part is a shellcode, which is stored in encrypted form. All the GuLoader's functionality is implemented in this shellcode. It performs virtual environment checks, prevents debugger from attaching and tracing, and in a newly created process, the shellcode downloads, decrypts, and executes the payload. This payload even may not be dropped to the hard disk and exist only in memory. At first glance, this looks like useless VB6 application, but with a huge amount of data in the code section, which is not automatically recognized as code. This data contains obfuscated shellcode decryptor and the encrypted shellcode itself.
Alex, what caused IDA to fail parsing the code section?
There are several reasons. Let's look at this screenshot. This is a manually analyzed chunk of the shellcode decryptor. As you can see, it is a mix of junk instructions, conditional jumps, and random bytes that actually make IDA crazy. On this screenshot, you see what happens when IDA tries to analyze the same chunk automatically. Invalid instructions and jumps in the middle of instruction. But IDA even doesn't know where this code chunk starts. This is because some GMP instructions are obfuscated as well. The GMP address is not stored explicitly and is calculated dynamically. Also, the push plus read combination can be used instead of GMP instruction.
But it can be debugged. For example, we can set up some breakpoint, can't we?
Of course, but dynamic analysis is also hard for unprepared analysts in this case. To prevent dynamic analysis, GuLoader uses some anti-debugging tricks. In this code part, the malware hides the main thread from the debugger. This leads the debugged application to crash on any breakpoint hit. GuLoader also prevents the debugger from attaching to the running process by hooking the dbg UI remote break-in and dbg breakpoint functions. Our next task is to decrypt the shellcode. It is encrypted with only 4-byte XOR key, but the decryption key is calculated dynamically, and the decryptor contains a lot of junk code and random bytes. Therefore, there is no way to cut the key with YARA or regular expression. We thought about how to decrypt the shellcode statically if we can't extract the decryption key. The challenges include the shellcode is obfuscated and randomized as well, and the shellcode constantly evolves. If we found some code pattern in one sample, this part of the code may look very different in the newer sample.
So it is possible to somehow guess the shellcode decryption key?
The answer is yes. We have just told you that the shellcode is encrypted with only 4 bytes XOR key. Therefore, to determine the key, we need to find 8 bytes length sequence, which is present in the shellcode of each sample. We know that every shellcode has a URL inside. Therefore, we can use HTTP sequence to find the key. And how it works? We take 4 bytes of the encrypted shellcode, XOR it with HTTP, and we get a possible key. Then, we XOR the key with the next 4 bytes and compare with s:// to validate the key, and we continue until we get the valid key. We saw this approach used by other researchers, but in new version of GuLoader shellcode, we will not find URLs in plain text because they are additionally encrypted. Therefore, it's no longer possible to use the HTTP pattern for decryption. Please also note this URL that we found in many samples, myurl/myfile.bin. We will need it in a few minutes. However, we managed to find a few other text strings except URLs that are present inside of encrypted shellcode in all samples. This allowed us to statically decrypt the shellcode in every GuLoader sample and occasionally in other samples protected with another product from the same developer. In one such sample, we found a Unicode plain text string DarkEye protector. The DarkEye samples have a lot in common with the GuLoader samples. They are both compiled in Visual Basic, contain shellcode encrypted with a 4-byte XOR key, and have similarities in their code. For example, in this screenshot, you see the payload decryption functions in GuLoader and in DarkEye samples, and they are almost completely the same. This allowed us to assume that GuLoader and DarkEye are products from the same developer. Arie, could you tell us a bit more about DarkEye? What interesting did you find about it?
Yes, we found DarkEye Protector advertised in 2014 on Hacking Forums as a legitimate security product for protecting files against reverse engineering. The ad contains the address of the developer website securitycode.eu. However, we also found earlier advertisement in which DarkEye was described as providing protections against antiviruses. Those ads were posted by user Sonny Kichio with this contact email xsebix@hotmail.it.
Right, let's remember this email because we will need it a bit later. Well, let's look at the security code website. Indeed, it is connected to DarkEye. However, currently this website focuses on another product, CloudEyE. The company selling CloudEyE pretends to be legitimate. As said on their website, CloudEyE is security software intended for protecting Windows applications from cracking, tampering, debugging, disassembling, and dumping. The website contains YouTube video tutorials on how to use CloudEyE. In one of the videos, we noticed the URL myurl/myfile.bin that we have already seen in GuLoader samples. The videos contained instructions on how to encrypt and upload payloads to cloud drives such as Google Drive. At this moment, we were almost sure that CloudEyE is related to GuLoader. To confirm our theory, we obtained CloudEyE Protector. We built several samples with CloudEyE using different applications such as Windows Calculator and Notepad as sources. Then we checked the resulting samples with our products, threat emulation, and in our malware laboratory. We got the expected verdict. The CloudEyE produced samples were detected as GuLoader malware.
Okay, sound really suspicious, but can you be 100% sure using only automatic tools?
To be completely sure that CloudEyE produces samples that are universally acknowledged as GuLoader malware, we decided to analyze it manually and compare with the real GuLoader sample that we saw in the wild. For the experiment, we used a GuLoader sample that drops from book malware. Both samples contained shellcode encrypted with different 4-byte XOR keys. First, we decrypted the shellcodes. In both cases, we saw the same code randomization technique. The shellcode starts from a random stub and is prepended with a jump over this stub. In both samples, the same space on the stack is reserved for a structure with global variables. Variables in the structure have the same offset. Most of the code chunks differ only due to the applied randomization techniques. The useful code is the same in both samples. Functions differ only in randomized part. The URLs for downloading the payload and the joint file in the new version of GuLoader shellcode are additionally encrypted. After extracting the encryption keys, we can easily find and decrypt URLs in both samples. We can therefore conclude that the samples are almost identical and differ only due to the applied code randomization techniques.
Alex, what is the second URL for joined file?
Good question, Arie. This is generally used as a decoy. For example, the main payload can be formbook info stealer, but GuLoader also downloads a legitimate file, let's say Adobe installer, so that it looks as benign software if you run it. By default, this URL is set to myurl/myfile.bin. That's why we saw this URL in many samples. The 4 samples that are universally acknowledged as GuLoader malware are produced by CloudEyE Protector, which is a product of securitycode.eu. CloudEye's predecessor is DarkEye Protector, that was sold on the same website before CloudEyE. Let's now try to understand who are the people behind CloudEyE and DarkEye. As stated before, we found DarkEye Protector advertised on hack forums. We also found an archived website, darkeyecryptor.in, that was selling DarkEye. This is how we got the nicknames Sonikucho, XCBX, Sebeno, and the mail address connected with 2 of those names. We also found 2 more email addresses in a leaked email database that allowed us to connect all the nicknames together. So, we found 3 avatars and 3 email addresses used by the same person. But who is it? We accidentally found 1 more leaked document with names and email addresses of Italian citizens. This PDF contained the email address xcbx hotmail it and the name Sebastiano Dragna. The same name we can find in contact details on the securitycode.eu website. Let's return back to other websites where DarkEye was being sold. The websites are currently offline, therefore we used WebArchive. Both websites were selling DarkEye Protector at different times. In the websites we see the description of a lot of malicious features, such as inject custom process, hide file, persistence, bypass Kaspersky Internet Security, and fully undetectable for antiviruses. There is also description on how to use it with remote access Trojans. So, on the one hand, there is Security Code, the company that pretends to be legitimate, selling CloudEyE service to protect applications from cracking, and stating that malicious use is prohibited. Behind this company, there are 2 real people, Dragna Sebastiana and Ivano Mancini. On the other hand, there are avatars of Dragna Sebastiana, Sonikucho, XCBX, Sebeno, that were selling DarkEye to cybercriminals and advertising malicious features of DarkEye on 2 other websites and hacking forums. The question is, did the creators of CloudEyE know that it was generally used by cybercriminals? Arie, could you tell us what happened next after we published our research?
So, on June 8th, we published our findings. What the research community thought was GuLoader actually turns out to be CloudEyE, outwardly a legitimate company. In our publication, we presented the conclusive evidence that GuLoader is CloudEyE. Our publication gets some attention and was translated to many languages, even to Italian. Indeed, it also surprised us that behind the common dropper is so-called legitimate company that made a fortune by selling their evasion techniques to malicious actors. Just 2 days after our publication, CloudEyE announced on their website that service was suspended. The evidence was so solid that they could not deny the direct connection to their company. But don't get your hopes up. They have shown no sign of regret and are definitely not taking any responsibility. Instead, there is just a vague implication that their platform was misused. As we presented in the introduction, less than a day after CloudEyE service suspension, our telemetry showed a dramatic decrease in appearance of new GuLoader/CloudEyE attacks. The creator of CloudEyE contacted us and tried to justify themselves. They send us a long letter, approximately 800 words in length. They say that they have suffered various abuse perpetrated with their security software, and also claim that their regular customers are small or medium software developer groups who need protection for their code. And until June 10th, 2020, when CloudEyE announced their suspension, Checkpoint products were stopping hundreds of attacks using CloudEyE on a daily basis. We block the CloudEyE sample at the stage of detecting the dropper without waiting to check the payload. So we ask ourselves, maybe we were wrong and there is a possibility of legitimate use of CloudEyE. We decide to give CloudEyE the benefits of the doubt and run a check on CloudEyE payloads. For this experiment, we download 5,091 unique CloudEyE samples from VirusTotal service. For every one of the 5,000 samples, we decrypt the URL and download the payloads. We managed to extract and decrypt 3,255 unique payloads, as some of the CloudEyE samples lead to the same payload. The analysis result was conclusive, with 99.9% of the sample detected as carrying malicious payload intended for criminal use. To classify the payload, we use YAR rules for known malware families and sandbox simulation, and this is the result. The payload for almost all CloudEyE files were detected as malicious. On this chart, you can see number of CloudEyE samples and the corresponding malware families.
Arie, what is this green stick on the chart?
This is for benign files. Only 3 files were not detected as downloading malicious payloads.
And how many benign payloads? Also 3?
No, let's look on the 3 CloudEyE samples. They communicate the same host and download the same payload. And if we check this payload, it turns out to be PID, which is a free tool for detecting packers. But why would someone want to hide this publicly available utility? We can assume that someone just tests CloudEyE capabilities. And to CloudEye's protest of their innocence, we say in response that we have a little reason to believe their excuses. And after we opening our investigation, our results shown 99% of the samples were only used for malicious intent, and the CloudEyE service was implicit in thousands of attacks this year. 2 months ago, CloudEyE announced the resumption of the service. We are closely examining our telemetry and VirusTotal, looking for new samples. We will continue to keep our eyes on CloudEyE and will share any evidence for malicious activities. But at least now the entire community know who CloudEyE is and even got its own Mailpedia entry. Now that they are in the spotlight, they cannot operate with the same freedom as before. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much.